Most of our conversations are just noise and emotional static. We react instead of respond, leaving us feeling drained and exposed. But what if you could build an inner fortress so strong that no harsh word or heated debate could ever truly shake you? The ancient Stoics called this becoming untouchable. Marcus Aurelius wrote that our disturbances arise not from events, but from our judgments about them. This is the secret. Over the next minutes, we will walk through 27 tiny but profound shifts in mindset and behavior, all drawn from Stoic wisdom, that will build your conversational invulnerability piece by piece. This is not about learning to manipulate others. It is about achieving a state of unshakable self-possession. How many of your recent conversations have left you feeling stronger versus feeling weaker? The first and most crucial shift happens before you even open your mouth. It is the quiet work of fortifying your inner citadel. The Stoics envisioned this as an impregnable fortress within your own mind, a place of absolute calm and clarity that no external event can ever breach. This is not about building walls to hide from the world, but about establishing an unshakable center of gravity from which you can operate. The entire structure rests on a single, profound distinction, one that Epictetus laid out with stunning simplicity. He said that some things are up to us and some things are not up to us. Our own judgments, our impulses, our desires and aversions, these are within our control. The words other people say, the opinions they hold, the actions they take, these are not. Every moment of conversational friction arises from blurring this line. Imagine you receive harsh, unfair criticism. Without your inner citadel, the attack feels personal. Your heart races, your face flushes, and you are swept into a defensive storm. But from within the citadel, you perceive the same event differently. You hear the words, you process the information, but you recognize the other person's opinion as something outside your command. You can choose to evaluate the critique for useful nuggets without accepting the emotional venom it carries. You remain composed not because you are numb, but because you are grounded in what is truly yours to govern. So where in your own life do you most often find yourself mistaking what is outside your control for something you can or should command? How often are you truly listening versus just waiting for your turn to speak? This is the heart of the second shift, a practice the Stoics called prosauche. It is the art of mindful attention, a constant and vigilant awareness of your own mind as impressions flood in during any dialogue. This is not passive hearing. It is an active, disciplined observation of the inner commentary that narrates every interaction. Epictetus gave us the essential instruction. He said that we should not be carried away by the vividness of an impression, but say to it, "Wait a moment, let me see who you are and what you represent." This is the pause between the stimulus and your response, and in that tiny space lies all your freedom. Consider a common moment. Someone interrupts you mid-sentence. The immediate, raw impression is one of disrespect, a flare of irritation in your chest. Without prosauche, that flare becomes a forest fire. You might snap back, your tone sharpens, and the conversation spirals into a battle of egos. But with mindful attention, you notice the flash. You observe the thought. He is being rude as just that, a thought, an impression, not a command. You see the irritation rise, and you let it pass without giving it your voice. You might even choose to calmly continue your point after they finish, demonstrating composure rather than reflexive anger. This practice turns you into the watcher of your own mind, not its slave. For your next 3 conversations, try this simple exercise. Do not aim to change anything you say. Just become a detached witness, Observe your thoughts as if you were watching clouds drift across a sky. Notice the urge to defend, the impulse to boast, the flicker of annoyance. Do not judge them, just see them. This is the foundational work of building your inner citadel, one moment of awareness at a time. Marcus Aurelius would retreat to a quiet chamber of his mind and remind himself of the vastness of the cosmos to gain perspective. He would look up at the night sky and consider the infinite expanse, the countless stars, and the unimaginable stretch of time. Against that backdrop, the sting of an insult or the heat of a disagreement could not hold its power. This is the third shift, embracing the view from above. It is a mental exercise that deliberately shrinks the immediate drama of a conversation down to its true, almost laughably small size. In his private writings, he noted that the duration of our longest life is but a pinpoint, the substance of our bodies a fleeting collection of atoms, and our fame a mere whisper soon forgotten. When you feel your pulse quicken in a debate, this is your tool. You mentally zoom out, seeing not just the room you are in, but the building, the city, the planet spinning in a silent void. That sharp comment from a colleague, that perceived slight from a friend, what is it when viewed from such a cosmic distance? It is a tiny ripple in an endless ocean. Apply this to a workplace disagreement. You are locked in a tense meeting about a project deadline. The air is thick with frustration. Now pull back the camera in your mind. See the entire building, then the city block, then the continent from space. Ask yourself, how much will this specific argument matter in 1 year? Will you even remember the exact words spoken? Most likely, you will recall only the vague shape of the conflict, if you recall it at all. This is not about dismissing important issues, but about draining the toxic emotional urgency from them, allowing you to address the real problem with calm clarity. Think back to a conflict from your own past that felt absolutely monumental in the moment. A friendship ending over a misunderstanding, a furious argument with a family member. At the time, it consumed you, but from your current vantage point, it probably seems smaller, its sharp edges softened by time. That hindsight you now possess for past events is the very perspective you can choose to grant yourself for present tensions. For the next difficult conversation you face, try to borrow that future wisdom. See the moment from above and watch as the composure you need naturally fills the space where panic once resided. Not every hill is worth dying on, and the Stoics knew this better than anyone. This is the essence of the fourth shift, choosing your battles with wisdom. It is the practical application of Stoic discernment, a filter through which you evaluate every potential conflict before you invest a single ounce of your energy. The guiding principle is not about winning or losing, but about virtue and necessity. Does engaging in this debate serve a greater good? Does it align with your core values, or is it merely an exercise in ego? Seneca wrote extensively on the folly of quarreling with the ignorant, warning that it is a pointless battle where you have everything to lose and nothing to gain. He advised that we should be wary of entangling ourselves with those who are determined to misunderstand, for it is like wrestling with a pig in the mud. You both get dirty, but the pig enjoys it. The goal is to preserve your inner peace and your effectiveness, and that often means knowing when to gracefully disengage. Imagine you are at a casual dinner party and someone makes a minor factual error about a historical event or a piece of trivia. The impulse to correct them, to display your own knowledge, can be incredibly strong, but wisdom asks you to pause. Will correcting this error improve the situation, foster connection, or serve any purpose other than making you feel right and the other person feel wrong? If the answer is no, then the Stoic choice is to let it pass. Your tranquility is worth far more than the fleeting satisfaction of being correct. This is not weakness, it is a supreme act of strength, choosing what truly matters over what is merely trivial. Think about your own life for a moment. Make a mental list of 3 common conversational triggers for you, the topics or comments that reliably draw you into a debate. Now evaluate each one with this new lens of Stoic wisdom. Ask yourself, is this battle truly necessary? Does engaging with this serve my highest self, or is it just an old, automatic reflex? By consciously choosing where to invest your conversational energy, you stop being a puppet whose strings are pulled by every provocation and start being the one who holds the scissors. In a world that rewards loudness, the Stoic finds power in economy of words. We often mistake volume for authority and constant talking for engagement, but true strength lies in the disciplined restraint of speaking only when necessary and with clear intent. This shift is about moving from prolixity, from the endless stream of words that often masks our inner uncertainty, to a state of purposeful speech rooted in a calm and centered mind. The ancient Stoic teacher Zeno of Citium put it with beautiful simplicity. He said that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. This is not just a quaint saying, it is a profound design principle for effective communication. Another great teacher, Musonius Rufus, argued that speaking little and well is a sign of a well-ordered soul, while much speaking is a symptom of a mind in disarray. When you feel the urge to fill every silence, to explain yourself at length, to defend or boast or elaborate unnecessarily, that urge is often a signal. It is the sound of your ego seeking validation, of your inner citadel feeling a slight tremor. Purposeful speech, by contrast, emanates from the quiet confidence of that inner fortress. You know your own mind, and you feel no compulsion to prove its worth to everyone in the room. Consider a difficult conversation where you are being unfairly blamed for a mistake at work. The insecure, prolix response is a torrent of words. It is a long, winding story full of justifications, deflections, and excuses, all delivered with a nervous energy that screams insecurity. The Stoic, purposeful response is entirely different. It is a short, firm, and truthful statement. You might simply say, I understand your concern, and I take responsibility for my part. Let us focus on the solution. The first response drains your power and invites more debate. The second response preserves your dignity, commands respect, and steers the energy toward resolution. For your next meeting or social gathering, make this your private experiment. Observe the silences. Notice the physical sensation that arises in you when a quiet moment stretches a second too long. Do you feel a tightness in your chest, an itch to jump in and fill the void? Resist it. See what happens when you allow the silence to simply exist. You will discover that not every space needs to be filled with your sound, and in that quiet space, your few chosen words will carry a weight they never could before. What is your true intention when you enter a conversation, to be good or to look good? This single question cuts to the heart of the 6th shift, anchoring yourself in virtue rather than validation. So much of our conversational anxiety stems from a desperate need for external approval. We want to be seen as smart, funny, or right, but the Stoics propose a radical alternative. Make your sole aim to act with integrity, courage, justice, and wisdom. When that becomes your anchor, the opinions of others, their attempts to provoke or insult, lose all their power. They simply cannot touch the core of who you are. Epictetus put this truth in the starkest terms. He said, "Remember that it is not the person who insults you or attacks you who harms you, but the view you take of these things as harmful." When you are anchored in your own virtue, you revoke their power to harm you. Your character is yours to protect, and no external event can degrade it without your consent. Picture a common scenario. A colleague pulls you aside, eager to share a piece of malicious gossip about another coworker. The old, validation-seeking you might feel a thrill, a sense of inclusion, and lean in to listen and contribute. But the you who is anchored in virtue sees this for what it is. You recognize that participating in gossip conflicts with the virtues of justice and kindness. Your response is not one of self-righteousness, but of quiet principle. You might simply say, "I would prefer not to discuss someone who is not here to defend themselves," and then gently steer the conversation toward a more constructive topic. In that moment, you have not won an argument, but you have preserved your inner citadel. You have acted in alignment with your character. So take a moment and define for yourself what winning a conversation truly means from this Stoic perspective. Is it about having the last word, or is it about leaving the exchange with your integrity completely intact, having acted justly and wisely regardless of the outcome? When winning is redefined as staying true to your virtues, you become untouchable because your success is no longer dependent on anyone else's reaction. Before a difficult talk, take a moment to imagine the worst-case scenario calmly. This is not pessimism, it is a profound Stoic exercise known as Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils. The goal is not to dwell on fear, but to disarm it. By mentally rehearsing potential conversational challenges, you drain them of their power to shock you. Seneca championed this practice, writing that the person who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive. You are not trying to predict the future, you are simply inoculating your mind against the sting of surprise. Think of it as a fire drill for your composure. You walk through the emergency exits in your mind so that if a real fire breaks out, you do not panic, you simply execute the plan. Now apply this to a tough performance review you are dreading. Sit quietly beforehand and envision the harshest, most unfair criticism your manager could possibly deliver. Hear the words in your mind, see the disapproving look, feel the initial flush of anger and shame. Now, here is the crucial part. Do not stop at the insult. Continue the mental rehearsal. See yourself pausing, taking a slow breath, and responding not from a place of wounded pride, but from a foundation of reason. Your rehearsed response is not a clever comeback, but a simple, dignified acknowledgement. You might mentally practice saying, "I hear your feedback, and I will give it the serious consideration it deserves." Can you feel the difference? The emotional charge is gone, replaced by a quiet readiness. The actual conversation may unfold in a dozen different ways, but by pre-living the worst in your mind, you have already proven to yourself that you can handle it without breaking. Your inner citadel remains secure, so pick one upcoming conversation that holds some anxiety for you. It could be asking for a raise, confronting a friend, or even a stressful family dinner. Spend just 2 minutes today mentally walking through the most difficult version of that exchange. Practice your calm, virtuous response to a potential provocation. This small act of preparation builds a layer of resilience that makes you truly untouchable when the real dialogue begins. Plant the seed of your words with care, but do not demand that it grow. This simple metaphor captures the 8th shift, the practice of detaching from the outcome. Your only true possession in any conversation is the quality of your own effort, the integrity of your intention. The final result, whether the other person agrees, is persuaded, or even likes you, exists entirely outside the walls of your inner citadel. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this, writing that your duty is to act the right way, the rest is up to another. He meant that your job is to speak with honesty and justice, to perform your conversational duty with excellence. The reaction that follows is not your burden to carry. When you tie your inner peace to a specific result you cannot control, you hand over the keys to your fortress. You become a supplicant, waiting for external validation to feel that you have succeeded. The Stoic alternative is to find your success in the action itself, in the virtue you displayed by speaking your truth with clarity and compassion. Picture yourself giving honest, necessary feedback to a colleague. You have prepared, you choose your words with kindness, and you deliver the message with the genuine intention of helping them improve. This is you planting the seed with care. Now they react defensively. They cross their arms, their face hardens, and they reject everything you have said. The old, attached version of you would feel a surge of frustration and failure. You might be tempted to push harder, to argue, to try and force them to see your point, all in a desperate attempt to control an outcome that was never yours to command. But the version of you who is detached from the outcome simply observes their reaction. You remain calm, you have done your duty, you planted the seed with the best possible intention. Whether it grows in their mind is their business, not yours. Your inner peace remains undisturbed because your success was already achieved the moment you spoke with virtue. Think back to a recent conversation where you felt that knot of frustration in your stomach afterward. Perhaps you were trying to convince a friend of a different point of view, or maybe you were seeking approval from a parent. Now ask yourself this revealing question: where exactly was my attachment? Was I clinging to their agreement? Was I desperate for their praise? That clinging is the source of the pain, not the other person's response. When you release your grip on the outcome, you reclaim a profound kind of freedom, the freedom to speak your truth without fear, because the only result that truly matters is the one you have complete command over, your own virtuous intent. The most powerful position in a debate is often to truly understand your opponent's point of view. This is the 9th shift, transforming listening from a passive waiting period into an active exercise in empathy. We often listen with a hidden agenda, our minds quietly constructing our rebuttal while the other person is still speaking. This is listening to rebut, a subtle form of combat disguised as dialogue. The Stoic alternative is listening to understand, which is a profound expression of the virtue of justice. It means giving the other person a fair hearing, granting them the respect of your full attention as you seek truth over a cheap victory. Epictetus reminded us that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak, and this is the practical application of that design. It is about justice for the person in front of you and for the truth itself, which can only be found when you are willing to fully comprehend all sides. Imagine you are in a heated political discussion. The other person is laying out an argument you strongly disagree with. Your every instinct is to pounce on the first logical flaw you hear. But instead, you make a conscious choice. You quiet the internal commentator and focus entirely on grasping not just their words, but the underlying values and fears that drive their perspective. When they finish, you do not launch your counterattack. You say, "Let me see if I understand you correctly." You are saying that this policy is important because it provides a sense of security for your family, and you feel the current approach fails to do that. Is that right? This act of paraphrasing forces you to synthesize their point, and it shows them that you are engaged in good faith. Often they will say, "Yes, exactly," and their entire defensive posture will soften. They feel heard. Now the conversation can shift from a battle of positions to a shared exploration of a complex issue. For your next disagreement, make this your only goal. Do not try to win. Do not even try to persuade. Your single objective is to be able to articulate the other person's position so clearly and fairly that they would agree you have understood them perfectly. This one shift alone will transform the nature of your most difficult conversations, turning them from sources of conflict into opportunities for genuine connection and insight. There is a profound difference between feeling an emotion and being ruled by it. Stoic apatheia is not about feeling nothing, it is about not being enslaved by your feelings. This state of clear judgment, unclouded by destructive passions, is the 10th shift. The Stoics saw emotions like anger, envy, or excessive desire not as inevitable reactions, but as mistaken judgments we actively assent to. When a harsh comment lands, the initial sting is an involuntary impression, but the storm of rage that follows is a choice, a judgment that this event is an injustice that must be avenged. By withholding that assent, you maintain your freedom and your rationality. Seneca, in his powerful work on anger, described the emotion as a brief insanity, utterly futile and self-harming. He wrote that no plague has cost the human race more dearly, for anger is a destructive fire that burns the very heart of the person who carries it. To be free from such passions is to possess a quiet mind, capable of seeing a situation for what it is, not for what your inflamed emotions insist it must be. Imagine you are receiving a public critique, and you feel that familiar surge of heat in your chest, the tightening of your jaw. The passion of anger is presenting its case, demanding you lash out or offer a sharp, defensive retort. With apatheia, you notice the surge, you acknowledge the feeling, but you do not sign its permission slip. You let the wave of physiological anger pass through you without grabbing onto it and without letting it dictate your words. You might take a slow, deliberate breath, creating the space for your rational mind to re-engage. Your response, when it comes, is measured and factual, completely disarming the emotional charge of the situation. So take a moment and identify the passion that most frequently hijacks your conversations. Is it the hot flash of anger, the cold grip of envy when a colleague is praised, or the desperate ache for validation? Now go one layer deeper. What is the underlying judgment driving that feeling? When you feel that envy, is the judgment that you are somehow less worthy if you are not the one receiving praise. By naming the judgment, you rob the passion of its power, and you take one more step toward becoming truly untouchable in every exchange. The person across from you is, like you, struggling to find their way. This truth is the foundation of the 11th shift, remembering the common brotherhood of all people. The Stoics called this profound social connection oikeiosis, a concept that frames every human being as part of a single, universal community of reason. When you internalize this, it fundamentally rewires your perception of others. You no longer see an adversary to be defeated, but a fellow traveler who is, in their own way, trying to navigate life with the limited understanding and personal challenges they possess. This shift dissolves antagonism at its source, allowing you to interpret irritating or hostile behavior not as malice, but as a reflection of their own ignorance or inner pain. Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to this idea in his private meditations, urging himself to love mankind and to follow this simple truth. He wrote, "Remember that mankind are your kinsmen, and that to care for all men is according to man's nature." He did not say this was easy, but he insisted it was essential for a tranquil and virtuous life. When someone acts unjustly, he advised, remember that they do so out of ignorance of what is good and evil, and since their soul is injured by this error, you should pity them rather than hate them. Apply this to a conversation with a difficult family member, perhaps one who always seems to criticize your life choices. Without the lens of oikeiosis, their words feel like a personal attack, and you brace for a familiar battle. But with this shift, you see their criticism through a different, more compassionate frame. You recognize that their behavior likely stems from their own fears, their own unfulfilled expectations, or a genuine, albeit flawed, concern for your well-being. They are not a villain, they are a confused and limited human being, just as you can be at times. This does not mean you accept abuse, but it allows you to respond from a place of patience and understanding rather than reactive anger. Your calm, non-combative response can often de-escalate a situation that would otherwise spiral. Before your next difficult interaction, mentally preface the encounter with a simple, powerful phrase. Tell yourself, this person, like me, is doing what they think is right. This tiny mental adjustment creates an immediate space for empathy, reminding you of your shared, flawed humanity, and making your inner citadel not just a fortress for one, but a sanctuary for rational connection. Between a stimulus and your response, there is a space. The Stoics called this the discipline of assent. It is your mind's final checkpoint, a moment of supreme sovereignty where you decide whether to grant a first impression the power to dictate your reality. This is the 12th shift, and it turns every provocation into an opportunity to exercise your rational faculty. Epictetus laid out the entire mechanism with breathtaking clarity. He taught that we are disturbed not by things but by the judgments we form about them. The event itself is neutral until you assign it a value, until you give your assent to a particular interpretation. The discipline is to pause in that space and interrogate the initial impression before you let it pass the gates of your mind. Someone says you are incompetent. The raw impression is a sharp, painful stab to your ego. Without the discipline of assent, that impression is immediately accepted as truth. Your body flushes with shame, your thoughts spiral into defensiveness, and the conversation is lost. But with this practice, you insert a question mark. You catch the impression and hold it up to the light of reason. Is this statement objectively true, you ask? What is the actual evidence for it beyond this person's momentary frustration? Their opinion of me is outside my control, but my assessment of my own capabilities is firmly within it. By withholding your immediate assent, you transform a personal attack into a simple data point, one you can evaluate without emotional upheaval. For the rest of today, make this your private mission. The next time you receive a criticism, whether from a boss, a friend, or even your own inner voice, practice this pause. Later, take a moment to write it down. On one side of a page, jot the initial, raw impression. On the other, write the calm, rational judgment you could have formed after a moment of examination. You will see the stark difference between the story your emotions told and the truth your reason can find. This small act of writing builds the mental muscle for the discipline of assent, training you to live in that space of freedom where your peace of mind remains your own. Athletes deliberately push their bodies to the point of strain to build physical resilience. The Stoic applies the same principle to the mind, seeking out minor social discomfort as a form of training. This is the 13th shift, embracing voluntary discomfort to forge conversational fearlessness. The Stoics called this ascesis, a disciplined practice of willingly experiencing small hardships to render yourself indifferent to them when they arise by chance. Musonius Rufus taught that practicing poverty makes you unafraid of being poor, and practicing hardship makes you strong in the face of adversity. By choosing to step into slightly awkward or challenging conversations, you are not punishing yourself. You are vaccinating your mind against the paralysis of social anxiety. The Roman statesman Cato the Younger was famous for this, deliberately dressing in an old-fashioned toga and walking barefoot in the rain to toughen himself against public opinion. His goal was to become so accustomed to minor ridicule that no jeer from a political opponent could ever shake his focus. You can apply this same principle without such extreme measures. Your training ground is the low-stakes social interaction. It is the moment you feel the urge to stay silent, to blend into the background. That is your signal to step forward. Make it a point to ask a clarifying question in a large meeting, even if your voice might tremble slightly. Introduce yourself to one new person at a gathering, accepting the possibility of a brief, awkward pause. Voice a mild, contrary opinion in a friendly discussion, not to provoke conflict but to practice stating your view calmly. Each time you do this, you are sending a powerful message to your own psyche. You are proving that discomfort is not a threat to your survival, but a temporary sensation that you can navigate with composure. The fear of awkwardness loses its grip on you because you have faced it by choice. For the next week, give yourself a single, simple discomfort challenge. Commit to initiating one conversation you would normally avoid, or to asking one question that feels slightly bold. Observe what happens not in the room but within you. Notice the quiet confidence that grows when you realize you can handle the very thing you used to fear. The interrupter, the critic, the contrarian, these are not your enemies, they are your trainers. This is the 14th shift, a radical embrace of fate known to the Stoics as amor fati, the love of one's fate. It is the conscious decision to welcome every conversational challenge, not as a nuisance to be endured, but as a necessary drill for your character. Marcus Aurelius captured this with a line that has echoed through centuries, declaring that the impediment to action advances action, and what stands in the way becomes the way. The obstacle is not a barrier blocking your path, it is the path itself. Every disagreement is a chance to practice patience. Every insult is a test of your emotional resilience. Every difficult person is a sparring partner sent to sharpen your wisdom and your courage. When you begin to see your social world through this lens, frustration transforms into gratitude. That colleague who constantly questions your ideas is no longer a source of irritation, but a drill sergeant for your clarity and composure. They force you to articulate your thoughts more precisely and to defend your position without anger. The family member who always provokes you is not a tormentor, but a personal trainer for your patience, giving you the exact workout you need to strengthen that virtue. This is not about pretending to enjoy unpleasantness, but about recognizing its indispensable role in your growth. You would not get stronger by lifting feathers, and you cannot build an unshakable character in a world of constant agreement and praise. Think of one person in your life who reliably triggers a difficult conversation. Now reframe them, see them as your assigned coach. What 3 specific virtues can you practice exclusively with them? Perhaps it is the courage to speak your truth calmly, the wisdom to know when to disengage, or the justice to listen fairly even when you disagree. By setting this intention, you transform a draining conflict into a purposeful exercise. You stop being a victim of circumstance and become an active student of your own development, eagerly accepting the curriculum life provides. Stoics saw the universe as a single, living being. Your conversation is a tiny part of that whole. This perspective is the 15th shift, the practice of sympatheia, a deep recognition of interconnectedness. It is the understanding that every exchange, no matter how small, is a thread in the vast fabric of a shared reality. When you internalize this, the goal of your dialogue transforms. It is no longer about your individual victory, but about aligning with the health and truth of the entire system. Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to this cosmic vision, urging himself to remember that all things are intertwined with one another. A sacred bond exists among them, and almost nothing is alien to anything else. He saw his own role as that of a limb in the greater body of humanity, with a duty to work for the common welfare. To harm the conversation with pettiness or ego, then, is like a hand deciding to fight against the foot, an absurd act of self-sabotage that injures the entire organism you are part of. Apply this to a team meeting where ideas are being debated. Without sympatheia, you are invested in your idea being chosen, in getting the credit. You might push your point aggressively, dismiss others' contributions, and feel a sting of personal defeat if the group goes another way. But with the lens of interconnectedness, your focus shifts entirely. You are now a servant of the collective goal. You listen to all ideas with genuine curiosity, asking which solution best serves the whole team, the entire project. You might even find yourself synthesizing your idea with another's, creating a stronger, hybrid solution that no single person could have authored alone. Your personal credit becomes irrelevant, replaced by the quiet satisfaction of having served the common good. Your words, your tone, your willingness to collaborate, these are the ripples you send out from that single conversation. They influence the mood of the team, the quality of the work, and the trust within your community. One dismissive comment can poison a collaborative spirit for weeks, while one act of generous listening can build a bridge that leads to unforeseen innovations. Consider the last important meeting you were in. Can you trace the ripple effects, both positive and negative, that flowed from the words spoken there? How might your next conversation change if you saw yourself not as an isolated speaker, but as a vital node in a vast, living network with a responsibility to the truth of the whole? The most eloquent thing you can sometimes say is nothing at all for a moment. This is not a sign of hesitation, but a power move, a silent declaration that you are in command of the exchange. Master the pause, the 16th shift that transforms your physical presence in a conversation. That deliberate, silent space between a stimulus and your speech is the breathing room where reason can calmly override a raw impulse. It is the physical manifestation of the discipline of assent you have been building within your inner citadel, a tangible gap where you choose your response rather than being chosen by it. The Stoic ideal of a measured response lives in this very silence. An unthinking reaction is a slave to the first impression, but a considered reply is an act of a free mind. Picture yourself in a negotiation and the other party makes an unexpectedly low offer. The immediate, impulsive reaction is a flash of indignation, a quick rejection that could shut down the dialogue entirely. But you master the pause, you lean back slightly, you take a slow, imperceptible breath, and you let the silence hang in the air for 2 full seconds. In that quiet, your initial shock dissipates. Your rational mind engages, assessing the offer as a strategic position rather than a personal insult. Your eventual response, when it comes, is not a reflexive no, but a thoughtful question. You might say, "I appreciate the offer. Could you walk me through the reasoning behind that number?" This projects an aura of calm control and shifts the entire dynamic, forcing the other person to justify their position while you remain centered. For your next 3 significant conversations, make this your conscious practice. Do not worry about what you will say during the pause. Simply commit to holding a 2-second silence before you answer any important question or respond to any provocation. Feel the power in that stillness. Notice how it allows you to gather your thoughts and respond from a place of intention, not from a place of primal reaction. This tiny, silent shift speaks volumes about the unshakable person you are becoming. The most valuable truth is often wrapped in sandpaper. Someone delivers a critique with sharp, angry words, their tone laced with frustration. The immediate, raw impression is one of attack, and your entire system braces for a fight. This is the 17th shift, focusing solely on what is said, not how it is said. Your emotional reaction is a response to the packaging, the loud and abrasive delivery, but your rational mind has a different job: to carefully unwrap that package and examine the contents inside for any useful kernel of truth. This is a direct application of the dichotomy of control you have been building. You have zero command over another person's tone, their demeanor, or their emotional state. Those are external things outside the walls of your inner citadel, but your analysis of the content, your decision to sift the message for value, that is 100% yours to govern. Epictetus offered a perfect filter for this process. He said that it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it. You do not have to believe the angry message in its entirety. Your task is to hold it up to the light of your own reason and ask a single, powerful question. Disregarding the tone, is there anything here I can use to improve? Imagine your boss storms into your office, slams a report on your desk, and barks that your work is sloppy and unprofessional. The delivery is terrible, an obvious violation of respectful communication. The untrained mind would either crumble under the shame or fire back with equal anger, both reactions focused entirely on the how. But you, from within your citadel, take a mental step back. You hear the words sloppy and unprofessional, but you consciously separate them from the heat and volume. You ask your rational question, is there any evidence, independent of this outburst, that my work on this report could have been more precise? Perhaps you rushed the final proofread, or maybe a key date to point was misinterpreted. That tiny, factual nugget is the only thing that matters. You can mentally discard the emotional venom as their problem, not yours, while taking ownership of the actual, correctable mistake. Think back to a recent time you completely dismissed a message because of its delivery. A partner's complaint voiced with sarcasm, a parent's advice given with condescension. The packaging was so offensive that you threw the entire contents away without a second look. Now, re-evaluate that moment. Strip away the tone, the body language, the frustrating delivery. Look only at the raw content of the words that were spoken. Was there a single, valid point buried in all that noise, a piece of truth you missed because you were too busy reacting to the wrapper? Finding that one useful fragment, even in the most poorly delivered message, is a superpower. It means you can learn from anyone in any situation because you are no longer a slave to their presentation. You become a master of your own growth, collecting valuable data from the most unlikely and difficult sources. The same inner fortress that protects you from insults should also make you immune to flattery. Your worth is not a fluctuating stock price, rising with every compliment and crashing with every critique. It is a fixed value anchored in the bedrock of your character and your commitment to virtue. When you allow praise to inflate you, you are just as enslaved to external opinion as when you let criticism deflate you. In both cases, you have handed the remote control for your self-esteem to someone else. Seneca saw this with perfect clarity, warning that the man who is puffed up by prosperity will be sure to collapse in adversity. He observed that a person who is overly delighted by applause is equally vulnerable to being wounded by contempt. The goal is a steady, unshakable equanimity, a level plane where neither the sunshine of praise nor the storm of blame can alter the landscape of your soul. Picture receiving a glowing, public commendation for a project you led. The ego, untrained, wants to bask in that warmth. It wants to believe the hype, to let the compliments define you. You might feel a surge of pride, a desire to claim all the credit, and a subtle anxiety about how to live up to this new, exalted image. The Stoic response is profoundly different. You offer a simple, sincere thank you, acknowledging the gesture. Internally, however, you note the event for what it is, an external indifferent. You recognize the praise as a pleasant occurrence, but one that carries no more weight in determining your self-worth than the rain or the sunshine. You know your own efforts, your own shortcomings, and your own virtue far better than any observer ever could. Your internal monologue remains steady. That was a kind thing for them to say. My work was effective. I will continue to do my best. Now, imagine the opposite scenario. A key client sends a scathing email, blaming you entirely for a delay that was mostly outside your control. The untrained ego would rage, despair, or launch into a defensive tirade. The Stoic, practicing the same equanimity, hears the blame with the same detached calm as the praise. You offer the same measured response, perhaps saying, "I hear your frustration, and I will look into this immediately." Internally, you apply the same filter. This is their opinion, an external event. I will examine it for any useful feedback, and I will release the rest. Your worth remains constant, untouched by their frustration. For the rest of the day, make this your practice. Mentally rehearse receiving a major, life-changing compliment, perhaps winning a prestigious award. Feel the initial thrill, and then consciously let it settle into a calm, quiet acknowledgement. Then, mentally rehearse receiving a devastating, unfair criticism. Feel the initial sting, and then guide your mind back to that same calm, quiet center. See if you can arrive at the same internal state after both exercises. This is the mark of true equanimity, the final proof that your inner citadel is complete, protecting you not from pain, but from the far more dangerous tyranny of opinion in all its forms. A well-placed, gentle laugh can disarm a situation more effectively than 1,000 defensive words. This is the 19th shift, using humor as a shield, never as a sword. When wielded with temperance, a light and self-aware humor becomes a powerful expression of Stoic confidence, proving you are so secure in your own skin that you do not need to respond to tension with matching force. The Stoics were not known for their stand-up routines, but their philosophy deeply aligns with the virtue of not taking oneself too seriously, a profound form of perspective that sees the inherent absurdity in many of our self-important dramas. It is the difference between reacting to a provocation with brittle seriousness and choosing to acknowledge the moment with a graceful, disarming wit that serves the conversation rather than your ego. Imagine you are presenting to a room and you accidentally mispronounce a common word. A colleague smirks and loudly corrects you. The defensive path is to flush with embarrassment, offer a stiff correction, and let the awkward moment hang in the air, poisoning your confidence for the rest of the talk. But the path of the shield is to smile slightly, nod, and say, "Thank you for the assist. My brain and my tongue are not always on speaking terms." This light, self-deprecating comment does three things instantly. It acknowledges the mistake without shame, it robs the critic of their power to fluster you, and it displays a level of self-possession that commands far more respect than a flustered defense ever could. The key is that the humor is directed inward at your own minor foible, and never outward as a sarcastic barb aimed at another. Sarcasm is a sword that seeks to wound, but self-deprecating humor is a shield that protects your peace and disarms potential conflict. Think of one recent situation where you felt your defenses rise, where you were criticized or put on the spot. Now, replay that moment in your mind with a new ending. What one simple, gentle, and truthful comment could you have made about your own role in the situation that would have introduced a moment of shared humanity, a brief smile, and completely changed the emotional charge of the exchange? That small choice is the application of Stoic temperance, using a spark of levity not to escape the truth, but to illuminate it with grace. If this were your last conversation with this person, what would you truly want to say? This grounding question lies at the heart of the 20th shift, a practice the Stoics called Memento Mori, a deliberate remembrance of your own mortality. Far from being a morbid fixation, this awareness acts as a powerful lens, instantly clarifying what holds real weight and what is merely trivial noise. It forces you to confront the finite number of words you will ever speak, making you a better steward of the ones you choose to use now. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself each morning that he would meet interfering and ungrateful people, but he could not be angry with them or hate them, for we are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids. And to turn against one another is against nature. And he adds, and all this you will soon be dead. That finality is not a threat, it is a focusing agent. It asks, is this argument, this moment of pride, this stubborn silence, worth the irreplaceable breath you are spending on it? Apply this to a long-standing family argument, a years-long cold war over an old inheritance or a forgotten insult. The details of who said what and why have taken on a life of their own, fueling resentment that surfaces at every gathering. Now, hold the Memento Mori lens to it. Imagine you are at the end of your life, looking back. In that final reckoning, will the specific division of assets or the exact wording of that decade-old comment matter at all? Or will you only feel the weight of the lost time, the missed conversations, the warmth that was sacrificed at the altar of being right? The practice does not demand you capitulate on matters of principle, but it ruthlessly exposes the pettiness that so often masquerades as principle. It compels you to speak the words that heal rather than the words that hurt, to offer the apology you have been withholding, to express the appreciation you have been too proud to voice. Seneca powerfully stated that we are dying every day, that life is not short, we make it so. We are not wasteful of it, but prodigal. We act as if life will go on forever, deferring meaningful conversations for a more convenient time that may never arrive. To make this shift tangible, set a daily reminder on your phone. Let the notification be a simple two-word phrase, Memento Mori. Let it appear not as a somber warning, but as a quiet invitation to infuse your very next interaction with the purpose and clarity that only a conscious life can offer. Before your words leave your mouth, let them pass through the gatekeeper of virtue. This is the 21st shift, a pre-speech ritual of applying a triple filter to every statement you consider making. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? While this test is often credited to Socrates, its spirit is pure Stoicism, a practical drill for living the virtues of wisdom and justice in your daily dialogue. To speak only what is necessary and true is to wield your words with the precision of a surgeon, not the recklessness of a brawler. It is an act of profound respect for the power of language and for the people who hear it. Each part of the filter serves a distinct purpose. The question of truth anchors you in reality, preventing the spread of gossip, rumor, and your own unchecked assumptions. The question of necessity forces you to consider your intent, weeding out idle chatter, pointless complaints, and words spoken merely to hear your own voice. And the question of kindness, which the Stoics would frame as an expression of justice and fellowship, ensures your speech builds up rather than tears down, that it serves the common good. Imagine a coworker confides in you about a personal struggle. Later, you are talking with another colleague who is speculating wildly about that person's recent performance. The unfiltered response, driven by a desire to seem in the know, might be to share the confidential information, adding your own layer of speculation. But you pause, you run it through the gatekeeper. Is it true? The private information is, but your speculation is not. Is it necessary? No, it serves no constructive purpose and betrays a trust. Is it kind? Absolutely not. Your filtered response becomes a simple, I do not know the full story, but I am sure they are doing their best. This statement is true, necessary to halt the gossip, and kind to all involved. It builds a reputation for integrity that makes you a pillar others can trust. For the next hour, make this your conscious practice. With every sentence you form, pause just for a heartbeat and subject it to this three-part examination. You will be astonished at how much of what you were about to say fails to pass this simple test, and you will feel the immediate power that comes from choosing only the words that are worthy of your voice. Every person you meet is a teacher of patience if you choose to see them that way. This perspective is the 22nd shift, seeing the logos in the other. The Stoics believed the universe itself was permeated by a divine, rational principle they called the logos, a spark of which exists within every single human being. Your conversational partner, no matter how difficult, possesses this core of reason, even if it is currently buried under layers of poor judgment, raw emotion, or habitual behavior. Your task is not to react to the surface noise, but to engage with that buried spark, to speak to the highest, most rational version of them that exists. In doing so, you sometimes call that very rationality forth. Marcus Aurelius framed this as a duty, writing that one human being is formed for the sake of another, either to improve them or to tolerate them. To improve them, you must first see the good in them worth improving. When you address the logos in someone, you are not being naive about their current behavior. You are making a strategic choice to bypass the emotional chaos and connect with the one part of them capable of a calm and reasoned response. Imagine you are a manager dealing with an irate customer. They are shouting, their faces red, their words are full of blame and exaggeration. The untrained reaction is to see an angry person and to either become defensive or to shrink away. But you, practicing this shift, look past the shouting. You see a rational being who is currently experiencing intense frustration, likely from a place of feeling unheard or powerless. You do not engage with the anger, you speak directly to the logos. Your tone is calm and respectful as you say, "I can see this situation is incredibly frustrating, and I want to understand it completely so we can find a solution. Can you walk me through what happened from the beginning?" This approach does not reward their bad behavior, it simply refuses to be drawn into it. By assuming their capacity for reason, you create a pathway for it to emerge. The shouting often subsides because you have given them a constructive channel for their grievance, appealing to the logical part of their mind that wants to explain a problem coherently. So think of one person in your life you consistently find difficult. Take a moment and write down one single way you could appeal to their inherent rationality in your next interaction. It might be by asking for their opinion on a solution, or by acknowledging the logic behind one of their core concerns, even if you disagree with their conclusions. This small act of preparation reorients your entire approach, transforming a frustrating obstacle into an opportunity to connect with the divine reason that connects us all. Knowing how to leave a conversation is as important as knowing how to start one. This 23rd shift is the art of the gracious exit, a deliberate and dignified withdrawal from dialogues that have ceased to be productive or virtuous. It is not an admission of defeat, but a powerful assertion of wisdom and courage, a recognition that continuing would only mean more wasted breath and potential damage. The Stoic virtue of prudence is your guide here, the practical wisdom to discern the right time for action, and just as crucially, the right time for inaction. To persist in a circular argument or a toxic exchange is to ignore the clear signs of a dead end, and wisdom always chooses the path that preserves your peace and your principles. Marcus Aurelius would remind himself that to be like the rocky headland against which the waves continually break, it stands firm, and around it the boiling waters are laid to rest. Sometimes standing firm means not fighting the waves, but simply removing yourself from the water entirely. Imagine you are locked in a debate with a relative about a topic you have discussed a dozen times before. The same points are made, the same emotional triggers are hit, and you can feel your energy draining away, your frustration building. This is the moment for a gracious exit. Your script is not one of anger or exasperation, but of calm finality. You might say, "I appreciate you sharing your perspective with me. I need some time to reflect on this, so let us pause here and talk again another time. This statement is masterful, it is respectful, it is firm, and it offers no foothold for further argument. It honors the person while decisively ending the unproductive pattern. The courage lies in tolerating the temporary discomfort of the exit, trusting that it is far better than the prolonged agony of a futile conflict. Think of one recurring conversation in your own life that always leaves you feeling drained and frustrated. Now craft your own single sentence of gracious exit. It could be, "I value our relationship too much to continue this debate right now," or "We see this differently, and I respect you enough to leave it there." Rehearse this line in your mind until it feels natural. This small piece of preparation arms you with a tool of immense power, ensuring you always have a dignified way out, preserving your energy for the conversations that truly matter and the relationships you truly wish to protect. A river does not force its way through the landscape. It flows, adapting to every stone and bend, finding its path with a quiet persistence. This is the 24th shift, holding your plans lightly in conversation, embodying the water's flexibility rather than the rock's stubbornness. When you enter a dialogue clutching a rigid script for how it must unfold, you are not engaging with the person in front of you. You are performing a monologue at them, and any deviation from your plan feels like a personal failure. Stoic acceptance, your amor fati, asks you to release that grip. It is about embracing the conversation as it is, not as you demand it to be, trusting that your prepared wisdom can adapt to the terrain of the moment. Marcus Aurelius wrote that whatever happens to you was prepared for you from all eternity, and the implication is profound. The unexpected objection, the sudden change of topic, the emotional reaction you did not foresee, these are not interruptions to your plan. They are the plan, they are the raw material you have been given to work with. Consider a sales pitch where the representative has memorized every feature and every rebuttal. The client interrupts early, not with an objection about price, but with a concern about implementation time. The rigid presenter, attached to their script, tries to steer the conversation back to the pre-planned benefits, ignoring the client's actual worry. The result is frustration on both sides. The adaptive presenter, however, holds their plan lightly. They let the client's concern become the new center of the conversation. They listen, acknowledge, and then adapt their knowledge to address that specific, real-time need. The sale is not won by the script, but by the responsive human connection. Think back to a recent talk that veered off the tracks you had laid for it. Where did you feel the internal tension rise, that subtle panic when your expected path was blocked? In that moment, what might have opened up if you had simply released your attachment to the destination and started exploring the new landscape with them? That release is not surrender. It is the sophisticated skill of navigating the current, using the very obstacles to find a better, more authentic way forward. The most profound listening happens when the voice inside your own head is silent. This is the 25th shift, cultivating an inner quiet that transforms you into a vessel of true receptivity. It is an advanced, master-level application of the mindful attention you have been practicing, where you're not merely observing your thoughts, but allowing them to subside completely, creating a pristine space for the other person to fully inhabit. Your mind, in this state, is not a courtroom where their words are being judged, but a quiet room where they are simply being heard. This inner silence is the closest you can come to offering someone the gift of your undivided presence, a sanctuary from the noise of the world and the even louder noise of your own internal commentary. It reflects the Stoic ideal of a mind free from the turbulence of unnecessary thought, a calm lake perfectly reflecting the sky above without a single ripple of its own making. To practice this, begin with a simple, almost mechanical focus. in your next conversation, direct your entire awareness to the raw sensory data of the other person's speech. Listen to the timbre of their voice, the rhythm of their breath between sentences, the subtle emphasis they place on certain words. Your only job is to absorb the meaning of their words as they are spoken, without any internal translation, rebuttal, or preparation. When your own thoughts inevitably arise, as they will, notice them as if they were a car passing outside your window. You hear the sound, but you do not run outside to chase it. You let the thought drift by without engaging it, and you gently return your focus to the sound of their voice. For just 1 minute in your very next interaction, try this exact exercise. Do not worry about what you will say when it is your turn to speak. Your sole mission is to be a perfect mirror. You will be astonished at what you hear when you are no longer listening to yourself. You will catch nuances in their tone you always missed. You will understand the deeper emotion behind their words, and you will find that your own responses, when they do come, are more insightful and connected because they are born from a place of deep comprehension, not from a frantic scramble to be right. The Stoic does not see a failed conversation, they see a lesson in what to practice next. This is the 26th shift, reframing every misstep and awkward moment as feedback, not failure. When you stumble over your words, when a joke falls flat, or when a discussion spirals into an argument you did not intend, the immediate reaction is often a wave of shame. You replay the moment, cringing at your own performance, labeling the entire exchange as a loss, but that emotional judgment is the very obstacle to your growth. The Stoic asks you to see the event for what it truly is, a collection of neutral data points. The ancient wisdom reminds us that externals are neither good nor bad in themselves. It is our use of them that matters. A conversational outcome you label as bad is simply raw material. Your analysis of it and your decision to learn from it is where the real good or bad resides. This perspective systematically eliminates the fear and shame that poison future interactions, because you begin to welcome every outcome as a necessary report card on your progress. Imagine you offer a suggestion in a meeting, and it is met with a confused silence followed by a gentle correction from a colleague. The old, failure-focused mind would internalize this as humiliation. You would retreat, vowing to speak less in the future to avoid the risk of further embarrassment. The growth-focused mind, however, treats the moment as a laboratory experiment. You dispassionately review the data. My suggestion was unclear. The way I phrased it caused confusion. The underlying idea may still have merit, but its presentation needs work. This is not a verdict on your worth. It is a diagnosis of a specific, correctable skill. Your plan for the next meeting is not silence, but to practice articulating your ideas with more precision and context. This turns a moment of perceived social failure into a masterclass in clarity. Think of one recent conversation you have labeled as a failure in your own mind. Now take out a journal and perform this simple autopsy. Write down 3 specific, dispassionate things you learned from that exchange. Perhaps you learned that a certain tone triggers defensiveness in your partner. Maybe you discovered that you interrupt more when you feel passionate about a topic, or you might have realized that your point was valid, but you delivered it at the wrong time. These are not indictments, they are your training manual for the next round. Each piece of data is a tiny, actionable shift waiting to be integrated, moving you steadily toward the untouchable composure you are building. The final shift is to remember that every conversation is ultimately about your own soul's condition. This is the culmination of all the work, the 27th and most profound shift, to embody eudaimonia as your ultimate goal. Eudaimonia, a concept the Stoics embraced from Aristotle, is not mere happiness or pleasure. It is human flourishing, a deep and abiding sense of fulfillment that comes from one thing alone, living in accordance with virtue. When this becomes the purpose of your dialogue, you have reached the summit. Every exchange, from a casual chat to a heated debate, is now measured by a single internal metric. Did I act with courage, wisdom, justice, and temperance? Your flourishing is no longer tied to the outcome, the agreement, or the approval of the person across from you. It is secured the moment you choose to speak and act from your highest character. Aristotle himself defined the goal of human life as an activity of the soul in accordance with virtue, and the Stoics built their entire philosophy upon this unshakable foundation. They understood that a good flow of life comes from a consistent and excellent character. This is the secret to being truly untouchable. You are immune not because you are thick-skinned, but because your core source of well-being is entirely self-generated, rooted in the integrity of your own choices. Look back at all 26 shifts that came before. The inner citadel, mindful attention, the view from above, choosing your battles, purposeful speech, anchoring in virtue, premeditation, detachment from outcomes, empathetic listening, emotional mastery, seeing our common brotherhood, the discipline of assent, voluntary discomfort, loving your fate, recognizing interconnectedness, mastering the pause, separating message from delivery, equanimity. Toward praise and blame, using humor as a shield, remembering mortality, the triple filter, speaking to the logos, the gracious exit, holding plans lightly, inner quiet, and reframing failure as feedback. Every single one is a practical tool, a tiny adjustment, all serving this single ultimate purpose, your eudaimonia. They are not a collection of random tips, but a unified system for ensuring that no matter what happens in the external world of conversation, your inner world, your soul's condition, remains one of flourishing. So as we conclude this journey, hold up this final lens, looking back on your conversations this week. Which ones genuinely contributed to your eudaimonia and which ones detracted from it? The answer to that question is your compass, pointing you toward the untouchable peace that has been your destination all along. These 27 shifts are not a random list of conversational tricks. They are a single, interlocking system for constructing an unshakable inner character. The core message of Stoicism, the one that makes you untouchable, is that true invulnerability comes from self-mastery, never from the futile attempt to control others. Your power lies not in managing the words people say, but in mastering your judgments about them. Epictetus, the philosopher who began his life as a slave, gifted us the ultimate key to this freedom. He said that freedom is secured not by the fulfillment of your desires, but by the removal of your desires. When you desire only what is within your power, which is your own virtue and your reasoned choice, you become truly free and truly unassailable. This entire journey has been about fortifying your inner citadel, anchoring your every word in virtue, and living the liberating truth of the dichotomy of control. You have built a foundation where your sense of worth and your peace of mind are no longer hostages to the opinions and reactions of others. Now the real work begins. For the coming week, do not try to implement all 27 shifts at once. That is a recipe for overwhelm. Instead, choose just one. The one that resonated most deeply, the one that you know would create the greatest change in your daily interactions. Dedicate the next 7 days to practicing that single shift with relentless focus. Observe how it alters the landscape of your conversations and, more importantly, the condition of your own soul. We would be honored to hear about your journey. In the comments below, share which of these 27 shifts you have chosen to practice and why it speaks to you. If you found this path toward conversational invulnerability valuable, Subscribe for more practical Stoic wisdom to help you build a life of unshakable calm and purpose.